Hi everyone, welcome back to the All Inclusive podcast. On today's episode, I'm joined by Addie Johnsen, Chief People Officer at Aperian. We dive into the crucial topic of how organisations can ensure their mission and values are not just relevant, but also generally reflective of their current culture and goals. Addie shared invaluable insights on why values might become outdated and outlined 3 pivotal steps that any organisation can take to revitalise their guiding principles. As always, before jumping into the video, make sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on your notification bell and follow on your favourite podcast platform so that you never miss an episode. That being said, let's jump in. Hi Addie.
Hi, Natasha. Good to see you.
Oh, it's great seeing you. Thank you so much for joining me today on the podcast. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. We are seeing a smidge of spring here in the Boston area, so everything seems brighter and more possible today
Oh,
than it did
lovely.
even just a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm so happy for you. Unfortunately, I can't say the same. But I'm hoping.
It'll come your way.
Yeah, I'm hoping it's going to come soon. My grass would probably favor the weather right now because it's completely dying out. So I need more rain for it to grow. And then I need the sunshine. um,
Sounds good.
but let's kick things off. Tell our listeners a little bit more about you and your journey to where you are today at Aperian.
Sure. Well, this isn't some place I ever thought that I would be or a career path that I thought I'd be on or honestly even knew existed when I started my journey. Think things started for me personally. I was very fortunate all the way going back to elementary school to get a taste for leadership and a leadership position just through student activities. But I was immediately drawn to and aware of the opportunity in leadership to bring people together that probably wouldn't normally be together or cross paths, and the ability to do something together that is greater. So, of course, back then, that would have been a bake sale or organizing an event like a dance. Um, that's translated really well into the workplace where we don't always choose who we're working with and how we came together, but we do have the opportunity to work with those, get to know folks that are different than us, and accomplish some really great things. So with the HR side of that leadership, I joined our company just over 17 years ago. I was an intern in college, and my first job was to source subject matter experts representing particular countries and cultures. And I was able to do and be a part of these really amazing interviews with folks from all around the globe and dig into what it was like to actually live and work in these countries and cultures, and not just what things were different or similar, but why. How was this showing up, and what parts about their community, about their own personal identity, was influencing their behaviors. So I realized through that process and recruiting these folks and doing these interviews, oh, these are HR functions. I didn't quite realize that at the time. So I fortunately had some amazing mentors and sponsors within the organization that saw the link with human resource functions. So I started to grow over time into that area. And in the position I'm in now, I'm a chief people officer here at Aperian. Been the role version of it for about 6, 7 years now. I am so excited still by that opportunity and that privilege to be in a position of bringing different folks together and what can we actually do and accomplish together. And more so now, I think, than ever in the world of HR leadership, we have such an opportunity to positively impact the culture at where we work, so that the workplace isn't just some place where, yes, we get our paycheck. Of course, that's important. But can we actually learn skills and gain new knowledge that will not only help us at work, but actually enrich our lives outside of work as well? We spend some weeks more time at work than we maybe do with family and friends. So, what are we getting out of it? That's not just, again, a paycheck, but the skills we're learning and working with different people, resolving conflict, how can that translate over into our personal lives as well? So being a part of that, being able to positively influence that, gets me really excited and something I'm looking forward to doing more of,
Mm.
in the future too.
Oh, that's great. I mean, it's a fascinating and inspiring journey that you've got there, Addie. And I think also for Aperian, like the overall fun, like business operation, is very much reflective in also the people, like your employees as well at the same time. So your HR function is your approach is not only just for the people that work for you, but also for your customers, your clients as well, right? So, tell us a little bit more, like how did it come about the approach that you currently take now with your
Mm.
HR function?
Mm. Oh, fortunately, it's been really organic, and this was our business. We've been around for almost 35 years, and our founders that began our organization back in the 90s. The approach has always been, how can we understand more about ourselves, increase our self awareness, understand more about those that we're working with, and what we can do to bridge any gaps, any differences, but leverage similarities. So that's just the heart of what we do. It's our mission as well. So the fact that we are helping our clients with that, we have to be able to do that internally. Our clients come to us, of course, with challenges. How do I manage a team that have 8 different individuals in 8 different countries with different cultural and work style preferences? How do we do that effectively? And we get it. We feel the same challenges internally. So the work that we do externally, we have the opportunity to do internally. We absolutely have to every day as well. And starting with that self awareness, what are our preferred work styles? How do we see the world? How does that impact our behavior? And then learning more about those that we're working with that have a different perspective, have different preferences, have different cultural backgrounds, and what can we actually do about it to bridge those gaps, leverage those similarities to work better together.
That's great, and I mean, it doesn't come without its challenges, most likely, doing all of that. But it's great that you have understood the significance of making sure that your in-house is
Mhm.
you're basically practicing what you're preaching, right? Or is it preach what you no, practice what you preach. Yeah. So
Yes,
that's it.
that's it.
Said it the right way. So, it's great that you guys are practicing what you're preaching, which is really important because not many organizations do. So how do you find that the principles like self-awareness, empathy, kind of bias recognition, those are some of the key things that in previous conversations that you have said is really important. How, in your opinion, do those make such a significant difference once when they're done properly?
Mm. I'm so glad you asked because that's a really important topic and I know is on the minds of so many leaders now. Like we know that self-awareness is important. We have to work on our biases and understand the impact of our work and how do we really show and develop and grow empathy in our organizations. For us, directly linking that work into our values has been so important. We did do a values refresh last year where we really looked closely at the work that we were doing. What sort of behaviors were we looking for in our employees that maybe weren't explicit, that weren't written down, but yet were allowing folks to be successful, that led to growth within the company? What were those behaviors? And they did link to that curiosity and learning more about themselves and with others, really embracing difference and that true care and empathy for others. So we translated those directly into our values. Um, so, of course, part of that is our leadership has to model those values at all times, and we have to really integrate those values into all that we do, our processes, performance management, not just something that sounds good, but is something that we actually have in practice. So, having our leadership team as well as people managers really modeling that willingness to learn, um, holding ourselves accountable for doing better and not judging others who are also doing this work. even if they may be a different place or a different part of their journey and in self-awareness and in understanding the impact of what we do. It's been really helpful for us to increase accessibility to our leadership team too. Luckily, we're a smaller organization, so I know this is easier for us than it probably would be the larger organization. We're about 65 full-time people located around the globe. We started implementing coffee talks where our leadership team is available in between company calls and more formal communications, where anybody can sign up and join. There's not a set script, people can submit questions, but it's a great way for our management team to connect with folks in different regions, different functions, and understand what is the impact of the work that we're doing, not just our intent, what we want to do, but how are our decisions actually impacting someone who might be handling our IT tickets? They're doing our shared services support, our finance team, our sales team. So having that accessibility to leadership and that connection to the work that we're actually doing really does increase the self-awareness, definitely increases empathy, and can give us a check on some of those biases that can come in. So I think that connection to leadership, to the rest of the organization, um, is really important. And giving folks different modalities to communicate back to leadership. There's, of course, different preferences for communication, and then you add in a hierarchy and status and power. It can be really hard for leadership to get feedback. Are we actually listening? Do we have biases at play that we're not aware of? So having these informal checkpoints plus formal check-ins as well, company calls, having regional check-ins, as well as a formal feedback system, of course, as well, having different opportunities for folks to submit and connect with us in ways that are most comfortable and safe for them has been really important for us to, again, show that we are curious and we
Yeah.
do want to connect and we want to make sure that our intent is matching with the impact
Yeah.
of our work.
I mean, I love that. And um just as you're talking about kind of feedback in these check-ins, um
Mm,
I mean, how do you know that when you're doing these check-ins, you're getting this feedback, it's an honest, that
mhm,
you're getting honest opinions from
mm.
your staff? Because I do think that there are times where organizations do these check-ins and they say, yeah guys, like we want to know how you're feeling, but do they really?
Yes.
Can I really be honest here? Like, how do you
Mhm,
know, or what work have you done to make sure that when you are saying to your staff, like, and your people, look, we want to hear from you, we want your feedback, that they trust you enough to be honest?
mhm. That's not something that takes place overnight. It takes a lot of work to establish these channels of communication and absolutely the trust and the psychological safety to be able to submit feedback. Something that does go back down to, the awareness factor and understanding the preferred communication styles for different folks. We do fortunately have our own internal tool that we can use that really helps us with this. So I'm speaking from an American perspective. I know working with some of our colleagues in Denmark, for example, we can use our internal profiles to compare work styles. I know that my colleagues in Denmark tend to be much more direct than perhaps some of my colleagues that are located in Asia Pacific. So when structuring feedback loops, having something that's written that isn't necessarily anonymous might work better for those direct communicators. Whereas for those that are less direct and more hierarchical, perhaps, particularly in Asia Pacific, speaking generally, being able to have feedback come through a middle manager or through a trusted colleague that can be their advocate can be very, very helpful. And having a balance between group check ins, individual, informal as well. Virtual coffees are really helpful, as well as something that's anonymous too. So we have anonymous suggestion box that folks can put information in, as well as pulse checks. So it needs to be a little bit of everything, and then being able to look at all that data, keep track. Is what we're hearing on this side the same as that side? Is everything lined up? So having multiple modalities is really important, but understanding the style preferences that you're working with is a really key part of that as well as you're designing these different channels of communication.
Yeah, it's not like a one size fits all.
Absolutely not. I wish it'd be a lot easier, but less interesting. It would be a lot less interesting for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think when we're talking about, especially within diversity, equity, inclusion, we
Mhm,
say time and time again, we want people from different backgrounds, diverse perspectives, and so we're not all going to want to do things the same way. We're not all going to see things from the exact same perspective as others, and we're not all going to be comfortable with giving feedback what in one particular way. So it's great that
mhm.
you guys at Aperian understand that and that you're giving people enough options that they feel comfortable to give you honest opinions about how they're feeling.
And there's always work to be done here, for sure, and constantly focusing on building relationships and making sure that we are not making decisions that are in vacuums. Constantly asking that question, who's not in the room that should be? It does mean at times that decision making, we need to take a pause or slow down. It's that constant balance between wanting to move fast and get things done and feeling those external pressures in the market to do that, with really needing to also pause, take a breath. Who's not here? Whose voices do we not have? What are we missing? And making sure we're checking all those channels, informal and formal, uh, to get those other perspectives added into our decisions.
You mentioned about you guys have just recently done kind of a looked at redefining your values and a revamp on that. Great. How did that go down? So I mean, and when I say that, I mean in terms of how do you how do you know that this revamp is going to stick and it is going to
Mhm.
be the best one for the organization, and it's you're going to be able to not just simply say the words but actually put them in action?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good question, and obviously an area we've been very conscious of the last year and a half since we started the process. It had been on our radar for management the last couple of years. We've had similar values for, I guess, about 10, 12 years. We'd had them in place, and certainly a lot of growth and innovation has taken place since then. And it wasn't that our previous values weren't true or that they aren't still values. It was more that we could have seen them on any company's website and they weren't that prescriptive. So, for example, one was excellence, which is a fantastic value, and that is a common value we see out there, and it's very true. But what does excellence actually mean, and how does that help me do my role? So, when we entered into the values process and refreshing them, it was again thinking about what were the unwritten rules and expectations that we had for employees that we need to make explicit. What was it about our top performers that we would love to see more of? What has made them so successful at our organization? And was that explicit? Did they even know? And so it came through very clearly from us. These are kind of the key behaviors that we're looking at, these values that are coming out. And it wasn't just who we are today, what's working for us today, but adding that level of aspiration to it as well. So where we want to keep growing and where we want to be and who we want to be. So tying in those values to inclusion is really important as well. Embracing our differences, staying curious and keep learning are two of the values that came from that conversation. But that's speaking to that importance of constantly learning, of adding empathy, ensuring diverse perspectives, and how critical that is to our business. So, not just who we are today and what's been working for us, but where are we growing and what do we want to continue to focus on? So, having the values, and this was also through a lot of feedback through different avenues and different parts of our organization, functions, and regions, just implementing them in a way that makes sense. As you said, like not just something that looks good on a wall, but actually means something. So as we rolled out the values, we spent quite a bit of time indexing them. So what does this value look like when we're not living it enough? Where could we get into some trouble that way? but also what if we do too much of it? Where can it come up in excess that also might be a challenge? So stay curious and keep learning. When we don't do it enough, we're not asking questions. We're not seeing something that's different or not what we expected, and we're not asking why. The flip side, we're so curious, we're so excited, we're constantly going on to the next best thing, shiny object syndrome, and we're not actually focusing on the work that we need to do. So finding that right balance. So going through this type of exercise with all of our functions, all of our positions to really add them as guidelines to what behaviors are expected and what problems these values can help us solve. Um, there's a values card game that's relatively common out there that we used. It's helpful, but you list out 10 different common workplace problems. Have them generic, don't mention names, and you pick one of the values randomly and apply it to that problem. How can that value actually help you with that challenge? So again, they're not just something that looks good or sounds good, but actually can help you do your job, help you work better with others, and support your work with each other and within the organization.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Sounds like a great game. Um, so for our listeners out there and the leaders that are in their organization and they're considering a potential refresh of their values, what would you say from your experience and from everything that you've said so far today? Are like the top three critical steps that they need
Mm.
to be taking and taking into consideration?
Mm, top three. Doing that deep dive into the unwritten rules and really thinking about the behaviors that you have been rewarding, and that you want to continue to incentivize, you want to see more of, is really helpful. So taking away what you think is going to look or sound good, but what really makes sense that's authentic to you and your business, that you want every employee to come into work and think about and help them guide their decisions. So really having it be specific to you and your culture would be one. Um, Probably tied to one is, of course, ensuring that you do have diverse perspectives into that. Checking what those values can be interpreted as. One of the ones that we had looked at, for example, was humility. And that is something absolutely that shows up in our work. And there are a lot of different connotations for humility in different cultures around the world. And realizing, gosh, that's one that isn't going to make a lot of sense to everybody and isn't necessarily true in all that we do and doesn't really help us in all situations make decisions. So we need to be clear and find something that works better for us. So checking those diverse perspectives will really help us in that way. Three would be dedication from your leadership, that they and support mechanisms to reinforce them. So through your recruitment, through your interviews with candidates, through your performance management as well. Your leadership has to be completely bought in that this is something that will impact all parts of the employee life cycle, and has to be modeled through all aspects of your organization as well.
Oh, great. Thank you so much, Addie, for those three steps. For all the insights that you've given on how you guys have refreshed your values. You've really put thought into it, which I hope more organizations do, because it does make a world of difference to the employees and how they continue to grow and thrive in an organization. Um, just moving on slightly, you've been with Aperian 17 years. That's a long stint. I think I was with my organization for like about over a decade also.
Mm.
What kept you there? I'm just curious.
Yes. Oh, I love that question. And I'll add, I'm not alone in my long tenure, which speaks to the work. We have about a third of our company's been here more than a decade, and a couple folks just hit their 20-year anniversary, or will this year.
That's amazing.
Um, it's the work that we do. We're so fortunate that we're mission driven, and we get to work with other people that are here because they're just as curious about other people and just as dedicated to developing our self-awareness and want to build space where we can bring our whole selves to work, that we can really deeply care and get to know about people that are different. Uh, Being able to work for an organization that has that mission, and then you're surrounded by other people that are just as excited to do that work. It's just really great people, and the work that really is, may sound cliche, but making the world better through understanding, and again, that curiosity about others and actually doing something about the differences and the challenges that we have and how to navigate conflict. We all need more skills in that area. So it really has been an incredible journey to take all of those skills that we've been working on with our clients that we learn at work. They really do translate to our dinner table, to our relationships with our families and our friends. We had an employee who's been with us for a long time mention values, and they caught themselves and said, "Wait, I don't remember. Is that my value or the company's value?" Because they're so intertwined together. So I think that makes it a pretty special place to be.
Great. And where you've got your values and it's close to and it's easily implemented by everyone in the organization, how do you hold everyone accountable for for acting as they as or and for working in a way that you guys all want to see?
Mhm. Implementing the values as part of our performance management is one way to do it. This is something newer for us as we've had the refreshed values come out. So asking questions each round, which for us about every quarter or so, what's a value that you really leaned into this last period that you really found helpful, that you're really proud of, that you exhibited? And then, of course, the other side of that question is what's one that you want to lean into a bit more or that you want to spend a bit more time on and focus on? Or maybe it's not as comfortable and natural for you. So, lots of different versions of those questions of our employees. So, the managers also answer those questions as well from their perspective. What value has their team member really exhibited really well? And the flip side, where would you like them to spend a little more time and focus on? So it's implementing them formally in the performance management system is helpful, but we've also tied them into group meetings. Our management team just piloted this last week. We were able to meet together in person for the first time in a while. Our global team was together and our values were on the board. And before we even entered into discussions, we talked about which value we really wanted to focus on and was really going to help us in conversations. And at the end of the week, acknowledging which values we really saw each other exhibit and which ones we really continued to work on. So it's been so helpful to use them as those guides, and how we want to work together and how we provide feedback as well. Acknowledging folks, especially when they're doing something great, look how they modeled that value. So that's a call out that we'll do at a company call, for example. So as many places that we can integrate the values into our day-to-day conversation, as well as the formal structures, such as in a performance assessment, the more successful they'll be and the more comfortable we'll also be in using them too.
Oh, fantastic. And what would you say has been one of the biggest challenges that you've faced, which you weren't quite expecting so far in your role?
Well, maybe I can share an unexpected help or aid that I received. Obviously, a challenge. I am technically a department of one based on our staff size of 65 folks globally, but having really amazing partners that we hired because of their values and because of how they work. So I didn't expect to be able to have such great partners that allow me to do the deeper, more strategic work. So using a really great HRIS and performance management system, we happen to use Bamboo HR because their values align really closely with ours. So having a product and a team and a support through a third party like that has made a huge difference for what I've been able to do internally. In terms of an unexpected challenge, I knew it would be hard, but feeling it more so lately is that push and pull I mentioned earlier of really wanting to move fast. We're in a space that's constantly growing, evolving, innovating, and we've built teams that are, especially post COVID, with more people in person, that are co-located and taking advantage of those opportunities to make decisions fast and try things fast and then pivot. But that does mean we can miss out on opportunities to get feedback, suggestions from folks in other regions. So, time zone challenges. Like, this was a known issue. This is not a surprise. We've always had these challenges. But again, as we focused on more innovation and moving faster to meet market needs, really exciting updates to our product side, how do we balance all these fantastic, talented, brilliant people that also get to be co located with our folks that maybe aren't in that office and are in a different time zone? How do we make sure that they're included in the right conversations and that we're going at the right pace to ensure that we do have all the diverse opinions, thoughts, processes, input humanly possible? So that speed question is really tough. Going fast, but not so fast that we're missing out on having other folks included that need to be included.
What have you found is working to achieve that?
It is a work in progress for sure. I think acknowledging that this is a challenge is a part of it, and into the values again is really helpful too. That it's our jobs to embrace differences. It's our job to trust each other, another one of our values. And that looks like when things do need to move fast, that we did our part to get other input. Maybe it wasn't in person or maybe it wasn't live in a meeting, getting really creative with recordings and transparency with conversations that are taking place that others physically can't join for. So really leaning into those values, finding and getting creative with other ways to get input, even if somebody can't physically be there, either in person or in time zone
Yeah.
on that call. The other piece really is back to relationships. We use, as I mentioned, our own internal profile based on our work styles, and we have a lot of folks in our organization that are very relationship oriented, a lot of folks that are more task oriented, and we know this. So it's ensuring that we're keeping those work style preferences front of mind, and our task oriented folks need to know I need to spend an extra 5-10 minutes with my colleague who's more relationship oriented to check in, to chat, to have that connection before I jump into the task, for example. So that was a few different things I mentioned, but awareness that this is hard, this is a challenge, awareness of our work style preferences, and some creativity wherever possible to ensure that we can get some different voices and input, even if it can't all be synchronous.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, Addie, I've thoroughly enjoyed our conversation today. I think you've given us a lot of insight here, and I know our listeners are definitely going to be going away with some great tips and advice. But just before you do leave us, I'm going to squeeze you for a little bit more, just a tad.
Sure, happy to.
So just before you go, could you just give us your parting piece of advice for other HR leaders that are listening today?
Ooh, the one parting piece of advice. We spent a lot of time on this during our conversation today. But linking back to values would be one, is really looking at all your processes, procedures, your decision making mechanisms. Are values a part of them? And if they don't fit, it might be time to look at the values. I think that would be something top of mind for me at the moment.
Oh, lovely. Well, thanks again, Addie, so much for joining us today on the podcast. It's been fantastic. I wish you all the best in the future, and I can't wait until we get to speak again.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Natasha. It was so great to see you, and thanks for inviting me to today's conversation.